different elements in it, you know. So, and each scene should get one of these pages because, like in this case, scene number 2, Olivia rides the bus. In order to accomplish this scene, in order to shoot the scene, you need Olivia, of course. You need a bus. You need a bus driver. You need bus passengers. In this case, Olivia needs her phone. Olivia needs her headphones. Olivia is wearing a beanie and a raincoat. And you need to know all this in advance so that the people that are responsible for bringing these items, bring them on the day. To show up on the day and then find out that you need a bus is not the right time to find that out, of course. And I mean, it works a little differently. I mean, I think it sounds like there are like preset groups with you guys, and you know, you'll assign people different roles and responsibilities. But is that this?
No, I don't think so.
I think it was.
What's that stuff?
You know, you're going to assign people roles and responsibilities, and those people are going to be responsible for having all this stuff. But, you know, on a, you know, like you might, in a different situation, have to hire these people. And part of, you know, what should happen is, you know, meetings and an interview, just like any other job, where you are talking and figuring out if these people have the right vision and sensibility for the project, and ultimately you get along personally, that you can stand to be around them for the amount of hours that we end up working in this crazy business. But that being said, you know, I think that, to Chris's point before, it's, you know, philosophically that you would want to be collaborative, because you might have a certain vision for what Olivia is wearing, but when you meet with a costume designer, I feel like you should be open to them having a different idea and not just reject it because it's different, but be open-minded and listen to it because it might be better. And if your goal is to make the best possible project you can make, you should be open to all these different people. But you guys aren't animators and you guys aren't novelists sitting by yourself at a computer. It takes a lot of people to do film, and you should be, you know, be working with a group, and hopefully they are contributing in a meaningful way, and you should be open to that. And that could be for the costume designer, that could be for the cinematographer. By the way, if we say anything that you don't know, just stop us and
yeah, jump in with questions anytime.
Cinematographer, you know, your cinematographer and your costume designer, all the way to your actors, because you may have a certain vision about how you want Olivia to be played, or how you want her to walk from this place to this place in this scene. But the actor might have a different perspective on it, and you should be open to hearing that. And if it's better, you know, allow for it.
I always say, people, like friends or family or whoever, people don't like really know what goes into making television or film or whatever, always say like, all right, you're a producer, what does that mean? And I'm thinking about like what I end up doing on set every day is professional. Is like I just call it like professional problem solving. So like at any point in any day, you're gonna show up and like there's gonna be a million problems and things that have to be solved. And somebody's gonna come up and have a question. Where do I go with this? Where can I set this? Where can I park this car? Where's the entrance to this location? They told us we can't. You know, you might show up somewhere and they say, actually you can't use this entrance. You need to use the freight elevator. It's known where the elevator is. So a lot of what you guys will do in pre-production is think through every possible scenario of what you guys are doing. We used an example earlier about if you're going to shoot a scene in a bodega or like a grocery store or something. Before you're going to do that, the director is going to say, we're going to shoot this scene in this grocery store, we need to accomplish X, Y, and Z while we're in there. I want it to have this kind of look, I want to shoot the produce department, whatever. I want it to look expensive, I want it to look grimy. The locations person will then go out and look at those locations, kind of bring back options. They'll go in and take photos of that place, bring that back, talk through with the director. You guys will have to get permission to film in that place. And when you're going to get permission to film in all these locations, you're going to want to go in and talk to that person and know exactly kind of what you want. So where you need to film 2 scenes in there, how long is that going to take? How much space do we need? How much are we moving around? And a lot of the things that we're saying that we're talking about here will come with a lot of practice. Like no one will expect you guys to know right off the bat how long it takes to shoot a scene. Like sometimes you won't. There is no like definite answer to that all the time. But it's just kind of thinking through everything that you guys need to do and accomplish in any given location. And that's down to how long it's going to take you. If you're driving from somewhere outside the city, how long does it take to drive? Because the last thing you want to do is miscalculate something or not even think about that, and then you show up an hour late and you're already an hour behind before you showed up and started your day.
Yeah. Absolutely, because I mean, I don't know how many hours you're going to shoot, but like a traditional professional set, 12 hours is pretty standard. But you need to have, and this comes with practice, but you need to have some sense of what you can accomplish in the course of 12 hours, right? So if you think you're going to shoot the end of the world in one day, probably that's not going to happen. So it's not realistic. It's a bad sort of example. So I don't think you guys are going to write anything like that. But you get my point. You should be able to have some sense of what you can accomplish in the course of the day. And then during pre-production, like people need to be tasked with getting these things. So, like this particular scene required a street that we could shoot this bus scene on, right? So we got to get a location manager to go out and find the street. Well, not every street is going to be okay because we have to drive the bus down. So it limits you, and you go find a couple options that you can work with. And there needs to be a decision made by the director and the production designer and the DP and the location manager that this is the street that we're choosing. Conversely, like whoever's assigned to wardrobe has to go out and find that beanie and find that raincoat. That frankly might not even actually be in the script, but certainly Olivia needs clothes for the scene, right? So the costume designer, again, this goes towards hiring and finding somebody that you feel like has the right vision for the show. They're going to need to work autonomously. The director can't be involved in the minutia of every single decision. The costume designer needs to make some decisions on their own about what clothes they're putting these characters in. The prop master has to have some autonomy about, what kind of headphones they are. And hopefully you've hired this person because they understand what kind of headphones, as an example, Olivia would wear. They're not so off base with just having the wrong interpretation of the character. And that's only something that can come out either, through a conversation about the script or, even if you have a pre-existing relationship with a prop master or a cinematographer, that you're talking specifically about the script that you're about to shoot.
Do you guys have any questions so far? Anything that's jumped up? Yeah.
So you're saying that like a lot of these people have to have a lot of jobs and like a lot of things have to get done, but like especially for a smaller group, like you don't have one person or 2 people or like an entire crew to do costuming. Is it okay with a smaller group to like split up work in the same way that like every little job is addressed but just by the same people? So like you have a director, but maybe the director is also looking for locations, or you have a DP, but that DP is also looking for costuming and for different like music or whatever. Like, is it okay to split that up, even if it is?
The answer is yes, but you do need to have those assignments for accountability, because if it's left vague about who's supposed to have Olivia's beanie, then it may not show up. So you just have to make sure that you identify that, all right, DP, you're the DP, but you're also in charge of clothes. So that way you know who is supposed to have Olivia's beanie. You can't leave it very vague and open-ended, because stuff will start falling through the cracks, and that's not good.
Yeah, I've worked on shows where I've had one very focused role, and then I've worked on shows where I'm doing everything from like shooting, producing, picking out the clothes, driving people places. Like it's like the accordion of like based on what the role is. But yeah, it's all about just sitting down as a team with however big or small that team is in the beginning, and just starting to talk through things. And if there's somebody in the group who is, there's always somebody in the group who's like the type A, like anal retentive, organized person who loves, and that's me. I love making like a really nice spreadsheet. Like I get a lot of personal satisfaction in doing that. And if there's a person in your group that likes to do that, let them do that. And then there's the other person who's gonna loves thinking about wants to storyboard everything out. Like let your own personal and creative strengths, or like not so creative strengths, play out amongst your group, and just like sit down at the beginning and talk through all that stuff, and divvy things up.
And I think to Chris's point, like he brings up a good point, like when you're going to make those kinds of decisions, and by the way, those decisions are totally fine and those are expected in this environment, but make the smartest decisions with what you have. So like don't give costumes to somebody who doesn't know how to dress themselves. Right? You know what I mean? So just make the smartest decisions with the people that you have. More that question.
Is everyone in that same jacket?
I was just curious, what's it like the process for getting a location, kind of getting out permits? We've never done that. We're kind of just like filming in school.
Yeah, I understand. This came up in our first session, and I think the governing philosophy was, we can give you the technical answer, and then we can give you the answer that I think is actually going to get used in October. The technical answer is that someone from your team, typically the location manager, would go to the mayor's office of film, theater, and broadcasting in Midtown, submit a project information sheet. It requires insurance, and they would ultimately, when the schedule gets figured out, submit an application for a permit to say like, hey, on October 2nd, we're going to shoot on John A.M. until 5 p.m. That's the technical answer of how that would happen. I think in October, it's going to be a case-by-case basis for you guys, whether or not you actually get a permit. Now, I just want to say one thing. Just because you don't get a permit, if you're going to go shoot in a bodega, you still got to go get the bodega's permission to do that. So that's like a secondary. That's something as important. That's different than permitting. Permitting is a city thing. Walking into a business and asking them to shoot a scene from your movie is a different thing that you're going to have to do, no matter if you get permits or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the very, very baseline of that is just like getting permission from the person who's in charge. And what we're talking about before about splitting up roles and responsibilities, like location manager, you guys may divvy up, there might be like technically 3 location managers on your project. You guys are going to sit down and look at the script, and everybody, you guys might need to shoot in a dorm room or something. So somebody's going to be like, does anybody know a friend who we can call with a dorm room that we can shoot in? And then you just get, you get in touch with that person, let them know exactly what you want to do, what day you want to be there, what time you're going to show up, what you're bringing in, if there's any special lighting requests or sound, just like really talking through the logistics of that space. And this is what we were talking about before, like being the least glamorous part. Like this is the least glamorous part of making films or TV or whatever, but it's critical because if you don't think through some of this stuff, you could show up and like just have a door shut in your face, or the location guy be like, oh, sorry, we actually can't have you in here. So it's just kind of working through all of that stuff, and then getting, you guys, I imagine will have to be getting agreements from each location.
Yeah. So to Chris's point, like you'll work out, like you'll get it. Sorry, I know you had a question. So
isn't it true, like in New York City, that like you don't need a permit if it's like a DSLR camera? It's just a tripod.
If it's handheld, if you're not putting equipment on the ground, be it a tripod or a dolly or something like that, then typically you don't need a permit, unless of course it's not to say you have like 100 people blocking up the sidewalk. Right? You can't do that either. But it sounds like you guys are going to be a small enough footprint that the permit thing may not be something that we need to do.
Yeah. So you want if you're like say in Union Square, like tend to see people like having signs up saying that you are moving through this public space, this project is happening, you're essentially assigning away your rights to get compensation for being inside this thing. Is that connected to your permit to be filming in that space with or without a tripod?
you have to have that on top. You can be permitted to film somewhere, and that gives you permission to film there, but it doesn't extend to people's likenesses. So you would still need, and this is, I think, like Tom and Brian, they'll send you guys all like the specifics of what is and isn't allowed, and it's super case by case basis. But yeah, like let's say you're shooting a documentary at like Madison Square Garden, and you get permission to film in there. Actually, that's a terrible example. It's like 1,000 entrances. But let's say you're in some small club. The door, what you would do is like you would post a sign on the entrance to that club and say, by entering this premises, you agree, blah, 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 we're filming here. And that gives you permission to kind of film anybody that's in there at any given time. But if, not to fall too far down the rabbit hole, but if you're going to speak to anybody, an individual in that club and film with them, then they need
That's a
some
separate
individual
case with that
release.
individual.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to speak to what the requirements are going to be in October because it's not our jurisdiction. So the crowd release that we were talking about Union Square, I'm not sure if it's going to be a tool that you guys are going to be able to use in October. I think that's still a question that they're figuring out. But you know, if you are shooting in Times Square, like you can't, what do we say, lock that up? You guys know that phrase? Yeah, right. You can't lock, it's going to be really difficult to lock up Times Square. So, you might have like these big signs that say if you're entering, you're basically allowing yourself to be filmed. To Chris's point, that's fine if it's like people just in the background going by really quickly and they're not like heavily featured on the show. But for what you're doing in October, somebody who is like a speaking part, or if they're like, if there's like a transaction at the bodega and the person behind the counter, even if they don't speak any lines, is heavily featured in the show, you're going to have to get a release sign from them. And essentially the important part of that is because like filmmaking, there's a lot of like copyright stuff. And the part here that we're concerned with is that the person who signs this, the actor, is agreeing that you could use their likeness and voice and all that kind of stuff. And then they sign it, right? And then you've now absorbed the rights to use them, and you can like put your movie on YouTube and stuff like that. But without getting something like this signed, you can't publicly broadcast it, because if I go up to Chris in the street and I say, Chris, I want to shoot you, and he goes, great, and we shoot him, and then I don't get this release sign, and I put it on YouTube, Chris can come back and be like, oh, I'm going to sue you.
Where's my money?
And that's, some of this is pre-production, like you want to get as much of this done before you start shooting as possible, but also you should have some of these on hand with you because, stuff might come up like in the day and you need to get that stuff.
What are the consequences of not having a permit if you're filming in a public space?
I mean, you could get kicked out. The city could kick you out. The cops could kick you out.
There could be fines also.
Yeah. I mean, it depends. Nothing's ever happened to me beyond getting kicked. I've been kicked out of places. Nothing is beyond that because, like, most of the time in the city, especially, like, they ask you to leave, you gotta go, and that's the end of it. But yeah, you can get fined.
I feel like it goes down the track, you spend like 3 hours just main track, dollar move.
Yeah, if you're gonna do that, make sure you have a permit. Like, because it doesn't matter. Like, I've done that where, you spend like an hour trying to set something up, and then somebody comes over and asks you, like, sorry, we actually can't film here, and if you don't have a permit to show that you're allowed to be there, it doesn't matter how long you've been setting up, they kick you out. So that stuff. There are certain things that like are worth gambling over without a permit.
Like if you're handheld on a DSLR.
Right. But don't try to set up like a dolly shot that's gonna take an hour without knowing that you're gonna go.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the times.
Sorry, just one other level to that. Like just even if it's a sidewalk, but you're gonna be blocking out like businesses and stuff like that. Like get their permission too, because they could make a mistake about it on the day if you haven't let them know what you're doing and gotten them to say, okay, go ahead and lay out 30 feet of dolly track in front of my store today. Then they could make a big beef about it as well.
is there you're saying that a handheld is fine and you don't need the permit to do that kind of shooting because you're not putting down like heavy equipment on the ground. Is it a way around that to say, all right, we're going to use the same type of camera we would have put on sticks, but we're going to put it on like a Steadicam or a stabilizer so that it's technically handheld, but you're actually using type of larger rig?
Well,
could you get away with being on?
I think as long as there's not equipment on the ground, but anytime I've ever seen Steadicam, there's some like stand that they put it onto in between stuff.
That's like you got a vest on, you got your arm, you got your camera, and you're doing a shot through the dark, but you've actually never set up a particular like control area.
I think that a lot of it comes down to just like your footprint on a location.
Mm-hmm.
So if you show up somewhere with like a handheld camera, like the more present you make yourself on any given location, like for instance, the minute you put like, I don't know if you guys ever worked with like one by panel light, like battery powered panel lights, the minute you throw up a light or a sound guy throws out a boom pole, like it is like throwing out seeds to pigeons. Like people will just flock to you. You're drawing attention to yourself. So the least amount of attention. This is like kind of like going rogue without a permit kind of stuff, or like things that are on the line. Just the more you can look like a student film, which I'm saying in another group, I still sometimes will be like, yeah, no, I'm just making a student film, and it kind of like gets you a little more leeway that way. I think it's when you're doing stuff that rides the line, it's really kind of like just about your overall presence.
And just to be clarify one thing, we're talking about public spaces. Like you can't just walk into somebody's bodega with a camera on your shoulder.
It's on the ground.
It doesn't matter.
Permit or not, you need to get that permit.
Yeah, that's their house.
Yeah.
So with all this legalese, this is a fairly specific thing.
Yeah.
But how do these fall under something like a cemetery, which has all of these different names?
I've never shot a cemetery like that. Clear cemetery.
It's a good question. I think we're getting like it's a great question, and it's like super sophisticated question that I actually don't fully know the answer to. But suffice to say, like try not to shoot anyone else's names.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah. But if you would start with contacting, I don't know, like the city or whoever owns that cemetery, and then that person would would be able to guide you in some way. Like, what are we allowed to do here? Where can we? And a lot of times the location will lay out parameters for you too, where they will say, cool, you want to film in this cemetery or this grocery store or wherever, you can film here, you're not allowed to film here, you're not allowed to film any of our customers. You know, like there will be a back and forth with every location about kind of what is and isn't allowed on site.
What is a good way of documenting like that process if a lot of times you're probably going to be asking them on the spot?
Asking who owns.
Like asking business owners or people who own property.
Unless you're shooting like a follow doc where you don't know what's going to happen, definitely laying out all of that stuff in advance. Like any location that you guys are shooting like scripted projects here, so any location that you guys want to film in, I wouldn't recommend trying to shoot especially as a plan A, trying to shoot anything on the fly or trying to clear any location on the day. You know, you would want to have that stuff set up hopefully like days, weeks in advance. They're looking at, if things change or something happens on the fly or starts raining or whatever, you have to change something up at the last minute. A plan B could be something where you're trying.
You're gonna have to go back to the bodega that you had permission for. That makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Is there like an age restriction on setting up permits? So do you have to be like 18 to set up a permit?
Well, so it's a good question, and this actually will lead me to the thing. So essentially, anyone under 18 technically can't sign a legal document. So if you have an actor who's under 18 or an extra who's under 18, there's an additional form that they need their parent or guardian who is over 18 to sign for them, because that other document will be null and void if that person is not 18. You're asking the opposite question. I do not believe that you can, as somebody who's under 18, sign a permit application in New York City for the same reason.
Yeah, I think you would need like an advisor or somebody, an adult to do any of that.
A teacher or.
So it's like myself, I would be the producer of the project, and then I would be the one signing any legal documents.
Yeah, I think anything that needs
Would
a
I
signature
personally
on it.
have to have the insurance? Would my school have to have the insurance, or would the production company have to?
I think the festival will lay out a lot of that, like they will provide you guys with a lot of like parameters for insurance, and I think you guys
So, like-
are, in some way are covered under them to a certain
Right.
degree. Like they will get into much more of that stuff.
But like for outside of this invitational, like just for our own productions moving forward, is that something that, I mean, we have insurance for our production company, does that suffice for that type of project? Like that's the insurance that we need? Or is there a specific type of insurance that we have to get?
No, it's probably the same insurance. There are minimum requirements, so depending if your policy meets them or not. Related to the film fest and what's happening in October, I think Chris is right that the festival is going to help, use their insurance to cover any other locations that you would want to permit. What's you gonna say?
What about for individuals who like to make videos, like, and they're not say working with a company and they're under 18, but they might want to post their work somewhere or enter it somewhere, like go through this process?
So one thing that I watch a lot of YouTube and I watch a lot of like the pranks channels. And I'm five.
Channels on YouTube are great channels.
Yeah.
Fake content.
No, I know, but I guess a lot of the prank channels have like a second channel, like a vlog that shows like behind the scenes. And what I typically see them doing is they go up to the person that they supposedly just pranked, and they say on camera, "All right, are you okay with us using the footage in the show?" And the person says yes. I don't think that's like official or anything like that. Like I don't think it would hold up in a court of law or anything like that. But that is one way to go about it, I guess.
And then it also, there's a certain level of things that you can get away with if you're not trying to monetize it. So if you put something up online and it's out there, like you can, the minute things really change when you're making money off of something. So if you're making money off of something that somebody hasn't signed off on, the repercussions there are much it's a much bigger risk
Yeah.
to take at that point.
And if you make them look stupid for some reason,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
could incur their ire. It's safer. Look, it's safer to get the releases signed with each individual. I mean, like even as a point of comparison, like the crowd release stock isn't as great as getting somebody to sign this piece of paper individually. But I'm bringing up the crowd release because there's just like sometimes you just can't run around and get all those signatures. It's impossible. Because we're really into like legal nitty-gritty. If you're going to do this, if you're going to hold up a sign, you should also try to take pictures of it. So to show people that hey, like we were filming and we were holding a sign. So if you walked back there, in fact you did agree to it because of this. Again, this isn't as buttoned up as the signature, but. You had a question back there.
Yeah. I was kind of straying away from the legal aspect of it and the permits.
Yes, please.
How does one prepare for a documentary? Or, I mean, it doesn't even have to be a documentary. It could be a reality style show. It could be like a run and gun, less scripted, more improv narrative film, but something that happens kind of on the go and something that you shape more in the production and in the post-production. How do you do pre-production for something like that?
Well, there will be certain. I guess you start with what you know, right? So, if you are doing a documentary about a scientist who works in a lab, you're going to be like, you're going to be shooting in that lab. You're probably going to go to that person's home. You're probably going to be like, where maybe like ask them what's your favorite restaurant. Like you're going to talk to this person about their life, and you're going to learn a lot about them probably before you even start rolling on them, like depending on what makes them interesting. So you're going to learn and ask a lot of questions. So it's kind of anticipation, and this applies to the projects you guys are going to be doing in the fall. just anticipating as much as you possibly can. You will never solve for every single scenario. You just won't. But if you're set up for success in certain ways, like for example, let's say the scientist has like a caffeine addiction and they like want to get coffee 20 times a day. You anticipating that might try and clear 3 or 4 Starbucks or whatever local coffee shops in the area in advance, so that when the guy says to you, "I'm like, can we go shoot the scene in a coffee shop?" You go like, "Actually, yeah, we can, because I've already cleared these 3 places. We can go in there and we're good to go." So you can clear locations on the fly. Like I've done it. I did documentaries for years where you're literally just following the action, and you kind of send somebody ahead. They'll be like, "Can we go in here?" And you kind of quick send your locations manager or coordinator in to say, "Hey, we're shooting this project. Can we come in here, film here for this amount of time?" And they say yes or no. And having a good personality and going in with a smile goes a long way. Being polite. So yeah, it's a little bit of column A and B there, especially in docs. But yeah, you guys doing these projects will want to anticipate those things in a different way, but it's just kind of anticipating everything that can happen while you're on set.
Yeah, and we're encouraging you to be as planned as possible, but I also want to say, leave open a little bit of room to improvise and, deviate from the plan based on, you might get some pieces of information. Like, you might decide you're going to shoot the scene on that side of the street, but when you show up, the light on this side of the street is really so much better. Well, let's go run over there and let's shoot it there. If there's a business owner, you'd have to send somebody ahead and get a location release signed and be respectful of the fact that he might say no, and you may have to go back and shoot it on the original side of the street. But you certainly can try those kinds of things, definitely.
Yeah. What else? Do you guys?
Good questions.
Yeah, this is great.
It's like, you guys want to talk a little bit about script writing or like pre-production, the creative side of it, like some strategies that they can, like what their
you
scripts
guys,
can.
some of you missed the screenwriting
Yeah.
thing, right? Yeah, that's not our.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, we were told to keep it to pre-production.
I mean, what we did talk about a little earlier was when you guys go in to write something, you only have 3 days to shoot something, shoot and edit something, right? So go in, whoever's going to be writing, go in with it as free of a mind and imagination as possible, but also sort of being realistic that you're not going to be able to shoot somebody rappelling from a building that's going to take like 3 days to set up. Try to be realistic about that stuff. Another thing that came up before, focus on just telling a great story. And you guys are going to do maybe 6, 8, 10 page scripts for this short. Focus on the great story. Everyone will be more impressed with a simple story well told than a story with shooting 30 different locations and being over ambitious on the production side of it, and the story execution fails. You're not the high end production is not going to make up for that. So in a nutshell, just tell a great story. That's objective number 1, and then hope that will dictate a lot of the other stuff that you guys are doing.
Are there any little things that you've noticed over your years of experience that you just did wrong when you were originally doing pre-production stuff that you just think, oh, if I had gone back, I could have ironed over that super easy, but this one thing?
Things always take more time than you think they're going to. Always. So give yourself as much time and padding as you can. Saying before, give yourself an hour to set up at a location. From the minute you arrive to the minute you want to have, the director call to action, give yourself at least an hour, no matter where you are, to just kind of get the lay of the land, get the camera set up. Somebody's always going to be missing, or the minute you're ready to go, somebody's going to have to go to the bathroom. Think just that stuff. That to me was the biggest lesson, or the biggest shell shock in the beginning is, oh wow, this takes a lot longer to set up than I thought it was going to.
One thing that I still adhere to is have yummy food. I have found that most people, crew and actors, will tolerate like almost everything else, but if the food is not great, you'll hear those complaints every day.
Yeah, good crafty. Do like a Costco run before you go out.
I think one other thing. One other thing. Did I already give you the spiel about how this is all practice? Oh, yeah, okay, good. I can't. 3 sessions and all. You know, one thing again that will just come through, you know, doing it over and over and over again is, you know, sort of understanding your style and how you work and how long things take to do. You know, which is sort of a companion to what Chris was saying, because, you know, like Woody Allen shoots everything in like you're watching something on a stage in theater. You know, he goes home after 10 hours and watches the Knicks game. Like, that's his style, and he's awesome at it. You know, David Fincher does 100 takes of everything. So, you know, everyone's got a personal style that you'll need to develop, and that'll only come out after you. I'm not saying that you have the freedom to do 100 takes on this show in October, but I'm just saying you'll develop a certain style.
What happens with people who work on pre-production as a film?
The scenario here is like you guys are gonna like do pre-production, shoot for 3 days, and then move into post, or I guess be posting at the same time. But really, a lot of the time, your pre-production is happening, like there's an overlap there, where even though you're shooting something, you're planning ahead for like the next week or the next month or whatever you're going to be shooting down the line. So a lot of the time, you know, positions on shows are staggered, where, you know, obviously an editor does not start the same day that like the producer starts. There's like a big, very elaborate calendar that kind of shows when people come on and off shows. So people do phase in and out, but there are key players on shows or films or whatever that, for the most part, are there from beginning to end, or, you know, wrap whenever there's nothing left for them to do.
I think it sounds, if I understand the way this is working for you guys in October, like you're a group that's going to be the same group throughout the process.
Yeah.
Like on another project, the staffing might look like a bell curve. You know, you start out small, you'll literally swell for the days that you're shooting the actual thing, and then after you're done shooting it, it'll taper off again to a small group.
Yeah.
But as I understand it, you guys are traveling as a unit too.
Staying in a hotel.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, you guys are from.
Which is good. Like, that's being together. As a lot of the stuff we're talking about applies to bigger scale productions, but you guys are going to be able to, you have the luxury of being together sort of 24/7 doing this, and being in a smaller group, it helps just there's just not as many people to communicate with, so that will help things. And something Brian mentioned earlier, do dry runs of things. Like somebody was like, how long does it take to set up? And I don't know, it depends on what you're doing. Do dry runs, like do rehearsals, get the actors in, do rehearsals on things, do camera tests, do sound tests. As much like of a rhythm as you guys can get into as a team in advance will kind of prepare you for working out some of those kinks on set.
And then, you know, one other thing I want to talk about is like shot listing, because this is like a benefit that will help you make the best movie that you want to make. And this goes again to practice and just understanding how long things take. But, you know, again, like a traditional film will shoot 12 hours a day. That's what a traditional day is for a film. That's a finite amount of time. You can only accomplish so much in that period of time. So you need to have a sense of what it is you're trying to do. So, like one thing that will happen is, you know, you might, one thing you might do is, like, if you think you're going to show up on the day and figure all this stuff out, like as you go, you're setting yourself up for failure. This is a shot list. It's for scene 16, which is taking place in a music bar, and we've said we can do this in 3 hours. And these are all the different camera positions that the director wants in order to put that scene together the way they want to put it together. Now, I don't remember if we accomplished all this or not. I'm going to say maybe we didn't. Maybe we did. But if you wait till 1:30 to figure out that you didn't get all this, it's too late. It's too late. You have to know, you have to have this plan of attack to go in and be monitoring its progress throughout the course of the day so that you know that like you're supposed to be here by 12 and you're only here, that you're going to have to cut H and possibly K and M. And those are the best decisions, those are the best cuts to make. Those are the best decisions to make because you know that even if you don't get those, you can still put the scene together in a way that you want and that makes sense. Because if the audience can't understand the scene because you didn't get certain shots, then they're not going to have an enjoyable viewing experience.
So is that ordered chronologically or by priority?
So within the scene, it's a great question. Within the scene, traditionally it would be chronologically, but you can do it priority, knowing that you might just drop the last 4 things. But what I was saying was that if you're monitoring it as you go, it's not necessarily the last 4 shots that you'll have to drop. You might drop like 1 in the middle, and 1 in the middle, and 1 in the middle, and get the last shot because those are the important shots. So it's a style thing. I mean, if you're monitoring your progress, it doesn't need to be in priority order, but it's a sort of it's a good way to go about it if that makes sense for you.
If you're shooting, like let's say you have, it's a conversation and it says, oh, close up on person A and close up on person B. You can shoot one of the people's things for, I don't know, 20 minutes and get every single shot you need. Because if you're shooting with a zoom, you can just change your focal length and have a completely different shot.
Yeah, the only caveat I'll say to that is if they flub a line that you really wanted the coverage on them for, and you don't get it because they messed up the line, you may have to be forced to cut to the reaction shot. And that's probably a fine thing, and you should be flexible to that because people do flub lines, but you may not get the angle that you were designing initially if that happens. Or a bus goes by, or a plane goes overhead, and you lose the sound. I mean, there's a million things that could go wrong. But yes, you would want to cover the whole scene. Well, you would want to cover the whole scene from top to the bottom on that angle. Unless you already know that you're not going to use parts of it, then you wouldn't waste your time doing that because you do have, well, you do have you got to be realistic. You do have time limitations here. You have 3 days to, I think, shoot and edit a short, right? Yeah. So I don't know, you may not have the luxury to just shoot the entire scene in that direction if you already know you're not going to use it.
And have those conversations in advance. Talk with your team as much as you can before things get started, so that way you know what's important and what you ultimately want to see.
But also be open to the fact that, you may go into it and say, all right, well, we have time considerations. I'm not going to shoot the whole scene from this angle. But, maybe when you show up on set, that's the first time you're seeing the actor do it, and this actor maybe needs to do the whole thing that way because that's how they get warmed up. So you have to be open to that kind of stuff and adjust accordingly. And that means you may have to rethink all of these shots and lose some of them because you have to shoot it that way because that's the best performance. There's a million things. You just got to be flexible and make the smartest decision.
All right, we're gonna have to cut it
Yes,
there.
yes.
Thank you guys. Audience. Get you guys probably a little more simple, but we're going to get some of these documents, get them online so you can download them and stuff. I'm sure we've been asked about them a bunch. We're going to go to the lounge right now and wrap up.